The book's a bestseller, but how is Where the Crawdads Sing as a movie? Is it worth the price of admission? A woman who raised herself in the marshes of the Deep South becomes a suspect in the murder of a man she was once involved with. So I've not read the book that this film is based on, but lucky for me, I'm reviewing the movie and not the book, and it needs to be able to stand on its own as a story. Now, both my wife and daughter-in-law did read the book, and they felt the movie stayed fairly close to it. But again, I'm only reviewing this on the merits of the movie. Daisy Edgar-Jones stars as Kaya, a young woman who finds herself on trial for murder of a young man that she was kinda dating. Now, this is a spectacular looking movie. The scenery alone is just awesome. It takes place in the marshes of North Carolina, but I believe it was filmed in Louisiana. Either way, though, the swamps and marshlands felt more calm and serene rather than foreboding and ominous as those types of settings usually are portrayed. We've got quiet water with huge overhanging moss dangling from trees, and the greens of the surroundings are often illuminated by rays of sunshine that just break through the trees and the branches. And there's even a scene that takes place around this massive tree with leaves and flowers all around, and it sets this romantic and idyllic tone. And the cinematography is outstanding at creating looks that just envelop us. From aerials that show the snaking water to intimate shots of our characters standing within the swamp with these backgrounds that are all in soft focus. I mean, it creates a dreamlike environment at times. But there were two distinct points where it felt like the shots were do-overs and maybe shot on a green screen because the characters just had this unnatural glow to them, like it was just artificial lighting. And then it looked like there were some artifacts that were present around the characters' bodies, just on the periphery of their edges. Now, these are extremely minor nitpicks, especially because they were so short and then dwarfed by the awesomeness of the other shots. The story is narrated to us by Kaya as a young adult, but we get a decent flashback sequence that shows how she grew up in the marshes. And we get to see how her circumstances mold her into a self-sufficient and strong character. And she's endured a crap ton of adversity, but I love the determination she has just to keep going, to make the best of the circumstances, and instead of wallowing in self-defeat, she digs in and grows stronger. While this flashback isn't extraordinarily long, there's enough time spent to really understand Kaya and feel for her. So when we get to the present, where she's been accused of murder, we are invested in who she is and we feel the stakes that are in front of her. And while the mystery angle of this took a while to really get going, I mean, at least for me in the standpoint where I felt it was becoming more of the focus, once that engaged, I was hooked in that aspect as well. And up until that point, I was invested in Kaya and just watching her story of how she grew up and the few relationships that she was garnering. There's a couple who runs a small bait and tackle type general store where Kaya gets a lot of her supplies. Michael Hyatt and Sterling Macer Jr. play the couple, and I loved their presence in this. They've known Kaya since she was super little, and I absolutely felt the care and concern they had for her. They were so protective of her, and even though we don't get any backstory on them, or really even development outside of the interactions that they have with Kaya, we can see the quality of their character. And I love how they become a quiet but integral part of the young girl's life. Now, this is a story of tragedy, but also perseverance. Kaya experiences all sorts of setbacks from a very early age, but the story allows us to witness her struggles and grow through these. And even when accused of murder, she has to decide how she's going to handle it. And the story, I think, does a pretty decent job of making sure that we're in her head and understanding her thoughts. That's not always an easy feat to accomplish, because voiceovers, they're not the universal answer to insight. Here, though, because the film established Kaya as our narrator very early on, to hear her work through her emotions in her head and then let us inside, it feels natural and is then effective. I enjoyed the acting in this, and not just from Daisy Edgar-Jones. I mean, she was wonderful, maintaining this naive but strong and even slightly mysterious persona. And she brings huge charisma to the project. And when that's coupled with the large amount of backstory that we get on her character, she is very easy to root for within the narrative. In addition to Jones, though, there's Taylor John Smith, who played a childhood friend and then someone fairly influential in Kaya's life. He plays Tate, and he has this aw shucks boy next door vibe to him. I kept waiting for him to turn into an utter trash hound, but he really didn't do that. I mean, yeah, he is flawed, and he's not the perfect guy, but there's a sweetness and kindness to him, and I really enjoyed the chemistry between Kaya and Tate. There's another young man who plays a role in Kaya's life named Chase. He's played by Harris Dickinson. Now, he's played with this smarmy bit of arrogance and charm. And Dickinson does a good job of mixing all of those to create someone who comes across as sweet, but maybe rotten on the inside. And I think from the moment you see him, you'll get a sense of who he is and then be able to judge accordingly. David Strathairn is also in this, and he's kind of like Sam Rockwell, where he just makes everything better. Strathairn plays Kaya's lawyer, and I really enjoyed the sweetness and the calmness that he brings to the character. He's charming, but in a real and not surfacey way. The tone of this is pretty balanced, and it takes us on a good journey where there are both highs and lows, but we get to experience a few of both. And this helps the pace of the storytelling to flow well and then keep the interest high. Now, at about the halfway point, I was curious at how much time had passed. When I looked at my watch, that first hour did feel a bit long, and I thought we were really farther along in the story. But the last half of the story? I didn't notice the time at all. I think that's thanks in part to the mystery angle becoming more prevalent, and the story was just getting closer to the events that led up to the death that's being investigated. Now, something I was really fearful of is that we'd never get at the answer to the case. But there is a resolution to it, which I was glad for. It's not like that is the climax of the story, but what was an important detail for the story to address, and thankfully it did. So overall, Where the Crawdads Sing is a magnificent looking film with cinematography that captures the beauty of the natural settings and then creates a dreamlike environment. The acting is wonderful, providing some rich characters with good amounts of depth and development. And while the first half of the story felt a little longer than the last half, I was still invested throughout, and I found myself drawn into the mystery and then even more so, the journey of Kaya. There's sex, no nudity, some profanity, and a lot of violence, including sexual assault. I give Where the Crawdads Sing 4.5 out of 5 couches. So did you read the novel that this is based on? I'd love to hear what you thought of the movie in the comments below. Now, if you haven't read it, what's a good mystery that you've seen recently? Let me know that too in the comments. If you'd enjoy this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.